All
Hey,
right.
how's it going? Um,
Good. Erin, let
yeah,
me introduce you real quick, okay? And then
yeah,
I'll get you started. So thanks again, James, for your presentation and sharing your story. Again, I just love the power of connection that that story brings. We are now going to pass it over to Erin Miller, and her presentation is a little bit different. Erin is going to be talking more about her experiences um, transitioning into adult and how that works with family and other adults. And so her presentation is titled Relearning to Advocate for and with Your Child in Adulthood. And Erin,
we learn to advocate with your child in adulthood. You're with
with
us
your
now. It's you.
child in adulthood. Thanks for the
Mhm.
clarification, Erin. I will now turn it over to you and I'll stop putting words into your presentation.
Morning. My name is Erin Miller, and I'm an autistic millennial, a newly minted member of the disability sandwich generation. I'm mentoring today's autistic children. I'm caring for autistic elders who may never see support in their lifetimes. And I'm also filling in the middle for my own generation, too. I have to both get along with and challenge my parents' generation in order to do this, which puts me in a very interesting place, to say the least. I think there will be better outcomes for everyone if everyone has the same information. This will help us make constructive conflict. So why focus on autism? Because while much of the material here also applies to developmental disability, I'm focusing on autism because relationships in autism circles can be somewhat contentious. Recent improvements in diagnosis have caused us to forget our disability history, such as Rosemary Kennedy. Collectively, autism circles are still young and haven't hashed out much of our conflicts. And by ignoring history, we aren't seeing the entire lifespan. I focus on relationships between autistic adults and non-disabled parents. Because legislative advocacy is something that is widely taught by a number of organizations, and they do good work. Something we don't often talk about is this. In Wisconsin, 80% of all care is provided by families. That's about 19 hours per day. 40% of family caregivers spend an average of 57 hours per week caring for disabled family members. There's an ongoing, decades-long caregiver crisis in this country, and it becomes more urgent for people with 24-hour care needs and complex medical needs. Parents were taught that they were the experts in their IEP meetings. Self-advocates were taught that we were the experts in our own lives. So here we are. There are 2 or more adults in the same house, living in close quarters, spending the bulk of their day together. We need to learn to have some constructive conflict. Next slide, please. So, where are we? Actually, I find it's just as much of a question of when as where we are. You've been dropped into a wormhole in various points in US history. All of them exist at the same time. Many of these points in history still exist in the minds of people you are talking to trying to get services. Having fallen off the services cliff, actually, instead of a services cliff, I would argue that the parents of today's kids came in atop a recently constructed mesa, and after traveling a short distance, fell into the rest of the valley. The surrounding terrain is flat land for miles around. From here on out, you may see a few low hills with varying heights of progress, but still largely flat. I see this as the landscape for the majority of disabled adults, including autistic adults. Adult disability services are a patchwork of new patches shoehorned on top of an old infrastructure. This infrastructure was not designed for disabled people to survive past childhood, let alone have fulfilling lives that we choose in our community. It was built for disabled people to stay in one place for the rest of their lives, to not be in community, coming and going and connecting with other people. This was designed for another time. The infrastructure you see before you is badly outdated and needs lots of updates. So what now? You and your adult offspring are still together. We'll figure this out. Next slide, please. And there is a lot to figure out. This next source is a website run by autistic moms. Autistic moms are coming at parenting from a slightly different angle, both running a different body and brain and handling the daily logistics of being a parent. One thing they talk about is facilitating constructive conflict between their kids. Naturally, they're kids. They don't yet have the skills to talk about the situation, put their feelings into words, and have everyone be heard. This mom writes, I do not see it as bad or wrong when my kids have disagreements, or that they sometimes use words in ways that don't entirely accurately represent the big picture of what happened. I do not feel angry at them or see them as being in the wrong for needing help navigating these social interactions. I see it as part of their learning process. They are gaining skills in being around others and figuring out how to self-advocate and be responsible for their own feelings. While kids are learning about their feelings, parents are grappling with their own too. Talking with my mother, I recently commented, I think it's easier for me to connect with my inner child because my inner child isn't buried under the piles of the family laundry. And they said, yeah, pretty much. Being a mom is a blur. It's very task oriented. I can see now from my mother, it really is hard to shift out of get it done mode to trying to imagine their child's point of view. It was a lot easier for my mother to be able to say, would it kill you to get your socks in the hamper, than it was to step back, identify their own feelings, and act intentionally rather than react. Yeah, it is tiring. And it can be frustrating when someone needs support often and in rather intense ways. But that is neither the child's fault nor responsibility. Next slide, please. Burritos and cherry pie. This next source was written by a non-related disabled caregiver named David Hingsberger. His take was that while disabled people grow up too, many of us never get to the point where we can say no to things, like eating peas. Ooh. In our adult years, caregivers continue to have a much higher degree of control over our lives than our typically developing peers. It is horribly frustrating to have to experience this again and again and again and again, multiple times a day, with no end in sight. And that's what the burrito test is about. It's a measure of self-determination by asking, can this adult resident pop a microwave in the burrito? Excuse me, make a microwave burrito in the middle of the night, if they want to. Cherry pie runs along the same idea. The idea is, are caregivers saying no for a purpose? Imagine how you would feel if a grocery store clerk took a cherry pie out of your shopping cart and put it aside because, 1, they don't think you should be eating cherry pie. 2, they don't like cherry pies and they won't sell one to you. 3, they just aren't in the mood to process cherry pie today. 4, no wait, I'm on 5. 5, I think I'm the one who has to process this and pack this pie, so that means I get to decide if I want to do either of those things. And 6, cherry pies are just wrong. It should be self-evident why. As an adult disabled daughter, things like this make me very angry. So I will continue to script using Dave Hingsberger's quotes to keep at the issue. And again, a lot of the things I've been reading off of here are quotes from somebody else scripting. That is, I'm able to grab words there and be able to say the things that I can't quite pick out of my own brain just yet. So that quote is, all of you who have grown up with adult children know your role as parents have changed over the years. Parenting children necessitates a lot of no situations. But parenting adults needs a lot more support situations. That's the adaptation I'm talking about here. Our job is to facilitate as many yeses as we can in the course of one day. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. So, and learn from us too. As a disabled adult, I'll admit my parents knew more than I thought they did. Basically everything, you were right. And I'll consider what they have to say. But it is my decision. Our families need to learn from us, their adult sons and daughters, every bit as much as we learn from them. Something I need to tell my parents' generation. My father's generation keeps telling us we didn't have all these genders and feelings when I was a kid, and we turned out just fine. I disagree. I want to tell my father's generation, no, Dad, you did not turn out just fine when your father hit you. And now younger generations have the unenviable task of needing to be cycle breakers so that we don't do this to our kids. I'm not telling this. I'm not saying this just to have a ha-has. I'm right. You're wrong. We're focusing on the issue here. Next slide, please. There are so many occasions when I'm in these boards and committees and I have mixed feelings. On the one hand, yes, unsupported systems are brutally stressful for caregivers. Yes, people with 24 care needs are very disrespected and underserved, especially in research. Yes, it is important to address medical concerns. On the other hand, when disabled people know we are the cause of your stress and feel like a problem, it makes our population vulnerable to shame and self-hatred. I want to tell you, but I don't always know how to talk to you. Daughter me is angry that my disability is being written off because I can speak. Adult advocate me recognizes the autistic person in front of me, especially if they have 24-hour care needs, are under their family's rules. If I offend their caregivers, it may turn away vulnerable families. So I don't speak up. Instead, I sit in silence, trying to decide how to act. Next slide. It isn't either or, it's both and. I found this quote on Twitter that I particularly liked, which reads, "We can acknowledge that caregiving is a skill and should be valued as such in ways that don't frame the person receiving care as a burden." Next slide. There's just no good way to say this. Two very different people with very different experiences are likely to not speak the same language, especially if we're in close quarters and in close relationships. We will misunderstand each other. We will make mistakes. We will trigger each other's traumas and push each other's buttons. A lot. Conflict, it's there. That said, it is necessary to sit with your discomfort and take small steps towards some resolution. Take a break if you're uncomfortable is tipping over into overwhelm. Keep in mind, there is an unequal power dynamic between autistic people and our parents. In addition to the parent-child dynamic, there is also our society who believes that disability is less than. That's why Disability Day of Mourning has been created by disabled people, where we gather to mourn disabled people who were murdered by their parents. And the follow-up conversation on social media is usually about how hard disability is for parents, not about the dead person who was murdered. Yes, feel your feelings. And when you have done self-care, then decide. Then decide when and how to talk about your feelings. When and how you talk about your feelings. This will set the tone for your relationship with your disabled family members and their disabled elders. Autistic people and other marginalized people have a lot of unresolved trauma. it is not uncommon for traumatized people to make mistakes and just react. The reason I mention this is because knowing that trauma is there, knowing that just knowing that it's there, it takes the surprise out of it and starts to put more emotions under conscious control, which is key for better outcomes. And breaking those cycles. Take a break. Give each other grace. This will work towards your relationship. Next slide, please. So where did all these disabled kids come from? Where were all these disabled autistic kids when I was a kid? That's a question I often see asked a lot in autism communities, especially about those with 24-hour care needs. As we can see in the picture there, see that building on a hill? Yeah, that's where we used to be kept, especially if your child had complex medical needs and 24-hour care needs. Actually, people with more complex medical needs probably survive more often than they used to today because due to medical technology. But that's another story. It's at the core of many of our conflicts with autistic individuals and families on the public stage, on the world stage. I'm not well versed in the science. I'll leave that to the scientists. But there's one thing I do know about storytelling. A hyper focus on the child's stage of life with no mention of autistic adults gives the impression of a village without autistic elders. The members of this imagined village consist of two parents and they're often young adult children, the nuclear family. No grandparents, no uncles, no aunties or titis. No variation outside of a quiet tree-lined street. This rhetorical setup maintains a society with no plan to include autistic people in our communities. A no plan plan. Functionally, this is planning for autistic people to be excluded and for autistic people to die young. We need to tell the world that this is unacceptable and demand they start building adult supports now. Next slide, please. Oh. Right before this presentation, I just got off watching the news. Probably not a great idea, but yeah, it's getting scary out there. Executive orders on school discipline, Medicaid cuts proposed, freezing health spending on epilepsy research. It's all too easy to be overwhelmed and paralyzed. But hopelessness and paralysis are an advocate's worst enemy. It's important to do little things each day while scheduling rest and taking care of our families. These are big, complex, and important issues. They won't be resolved today. What needs to be done right now is to take that first step. And know that your sons and daughters do not make this journey alone. Your families do not make this journey alone. In addition to the larger developmental disability communities, your child's autistic elders are also here. My autistic elders are also here. As much as the current rhetoric tries to deny it, we are here. And we speak with the voices of experience. Autistic elders don't have all the answers, but everyone in this room can bring what they've got and have a better future than we would if we were alone. Autistic adults are not your enemies. We can build community together if you'll have us. We are here. We're here. You don't have to do this alone. And there we have it. That's it for me.
Wow, thank you, Erin. That was great. Thank you. Yeah, just all the self-reflection and a lot to unpack. One thing that I took away, and I would like to open it, if you're okay, Erin, with some questions, because we do have a little bit of time, and I think you said a number of things that are probably resonating with people. One thing, first of all, I just love the shout out to Dave Hinsberger. If people aren't familiar with him, we did lose Dave a couple of years ago. He passed away. But he was a great advocate for people with disabilities, and I believe he came from Canada, so not a U.S. perspective as well. So always appreciative. Um, I think the gist of a lot of what you're talking about is just this idea of power and control and how that changes not only for the child, whether a disability or not, but you have sort of this overlaying of power and control. And then I really loved the reflections and observations you had about parents, and how parents are also learning through this transition their power and control is also needing to change. So those were just some real big thoughts that I had in my head, and I just wanted to just acknowledge that and thank you for those insights. And we do have about 10 minutes or so. So if I would like to open it up for questions for Erin, and if there are another question for James, we can certainly entertain that too, because they both have finished up and their presentations are fresh in our minds. So if there are questions, please feel free to unmute or raise your hand. Go ahead, Nancy.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Erin for doing this presentation. I have known Erin for several years, and I don't know how many times I've told people about her advocacy work and how important she is to the community. Just so thank you so much, Erin. I also wanted to mention I'm in my late 70s. My gloriously autistic son is in his mid 40s. And just this past year and a half, we have figured out a better way to communicate with him. The message there is do not give up if you are trying to accomplish something and it's not working, keep trying because you never know when that magic moment will happen when there is a breakthrough and someone hands you a tool that you can use to improve the lives of the people with autism in your life. And I am just so happy that there are people like Erin to talk to. And I have learned so much from autistic adults in my own journey. I really, really recommend people get to know autistic adults. They are usually very interesting people and also very smart and have skills that the whole world needs. So thank you again, Erin.
Thank you, Nancy. I would agree with that 100%. And I think I'll just add to that comment that we all, I think, as we age and we go through life, learn different ways of communicating with people that we've been friends with for a long time or family members. So just that perspective, to keep that in mind. Everyone's different, and so always keep that open mind. And even, we all struggle with our siblings and our parents, and sometimes, like Nancy said, something will trigger or something will happen and a communication will just maybe come unstuck. And so thank you for that perspective, Nancy. I'll hand it over to Tracy. And your question, Tracy?
Not really a question, but more of a comment. I just really wanted to thank Erin for her words and the way you put together that presentation. As a parent just recently going through this and will be going through this, I think that you really I guess drove home the importance of taking into that account, that young adult. Not that I don't do it, but I really do have to catch myself a lot of times thinking like, okay, he's an adult, like what are we going to say? And if I don't like it, let him try it and see what happens and then talk about it. So again, I really appreciate all that you said. Thank you.
Erin, I'm kind of trying to look at the chat too, and just want you to know that somebody asked if they were able to copy and paste the quote that you included in the chat. Kara, do you want to clarify or ask Erin if I muddled up your quote that you're looking for?
No, that's correct. Yeah, the Twitter quote that you included would be perfect.
Which one?
I think the one from Twitter, or the one about caregiving specifically.
Yeah, I have all of them written down, so I could probably just send whichever ones you like.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hey, Andrea, would you be able to maybe bring that slide up again with that quote? It was the one from Twitter. I don't know. I don't want to put you on the IT spot here, but if you're able to, I know you're pretty good at it.
Oh, and by the way, those two quotes, respectfully connected, and the burritos and cherry pie, those were both longer articles that have since disappeared from the internet, but I still keep in my archives because they are just dead useful. It's copies of those are also available if you'd like them.
Thank you. That was the one, Kara?
Yes, it just really resonated with me. I don't know. I really, really like it. So I really appreciate you including it, Erin.
Yeah, I think that's a whole nother topic really for community of practice would be around caregiving, and lessons learned and insights as well. It's such a magical job, I think, it just requires a lot of being engaged and listening and being in the moment. So not everybody can do that. So that I think that's another topic on its own sometime.
One thing I might mention before we close that these are often things I'm thinking while I'm sitting in boards, while I'm sitting in committees, while I'm sitting in places where people make decisions, and I want to tell them this, but it would put somebody else at risk, and it's like, so what? And just have all these mixed stuff going on, and it's like, so I'm trying to sit, so I take a minute to sit back and try to figure out what to do. Honestly, people with 24-hour care needs, people with complex medical needs can live good, fulfilling lives, and I don't know how to say that without driving their families away. I don't know how to do that, so that'll be an ongoing conversation.
I think that's definitely an ongoing conversation. I think as well, somebody who's been working in this field and being an advocate and working with people with disabilities and autistic individuals, a lot of what we're doing is still relatively new when we look at history. And I think the generations that started with inclusion and community placement and being adults, all of those stories that we learn will help us hopefully refrain, tweak, improve programs and relationships and things going forward. But I think it is like a real interesting time because it's, community inclusion idea, all these programs are only 40, 50 sort of years old. And so it would be interesting to see another generation of people kind of go through that and what we learn and how those reflections and observation, insight, hopefully make positive impact on a lot of things that I think Erin has been bringing up in her presentation. So I will stop talking because I know I can do that. I will open it up if people have one more question. Otherwise, we will take about a 15-minute break and we'd come back about 10:25. But if there's another question or two, please either raise your hand or just come off mute or put it in the chat. All right. I guess we'll take Andrea's slide. We'll take a break. It's about 10:05, 10:06. So how about we come back at about in 15 minutes? And Tim, I guess you'll stop the recording and then we'll resume it when we come back from break.